Stay tuned. Today, I sit down with Steve Kehoe out of Chicago, and we discuss the power of referrals through networking. As always, I'm your host and San Francisco referral partner, Shawn Kunkler. Steve, let's go. I'm so stoked right now to be chatting with you.
Yep. Pumped to be here. I'm back.
You're back.
I didn't know I'd get invited back, but I'm back. So excited to chat it up again. And I don't know. I think it's always nice to network, nice to best practices, and kind of share experiences. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, share equity. It's funny, but you and I sat down with Sam out of San Diego, and it's cool. Like, we just kind of threw ideas around, and we came up with the Realtor 180 Inner Circle group, and it's been such a cool way for us to network with all the past guests and do just that. Like, here,
I can name drop like Brian Knox and Nathaniel Getzels and Sam and yourself. Like I've connected with these people one on one since we've had this Inner Circle group. So it's been really nice.
It's been really just fascinating too, because everybody, it's really cool because people will share, like, without ego and be like, hey, this is how I built this part of my business, and this is what I really screwed up, and I would recommend not doing that but doing this instead. And it's been, for me, such an amazing learning experience from just these incredibly high caliber agents literally peppered all across the US.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's proud of like what they've done, but when you can turn off the pride or ego and go, oh wow, I want to do more listening right now than anything, because there's a lot to learn out there. It's pretty neat. I think when I first started, well, I shouldn't say started, but like once I feel like I had my feet under me in the industry, I thought to myself, I don't necessarily need to network with agents. They are not giving me business. They are not, like, it is not a good use of my time. I need to be out networking with people that can, buy homes.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I admit. I was wrong. These people are important. Like other realtor networking, very important. Huge part of the business.
It's incredible. I mean, obviously we can live off of just referrals, and you're in Chicago, I'm in San Francisco, and the reality is if I have a client moving there, I can't help them. Right. Like, I don't have a license there. I'm not an expert. I have to rely on somebody who I trust. And the cool thing is being able to have all these conversations with you. I understand you on a deeper level, and when there's a match to be made, I know immediately if you two are going to gel, because at the end of it is the client is the most important part in the equation.
Of course.
And if they don't, if I'm not confident they're going to just have an amazing experience with you, it's going to go nowhere, and everybody's unhappy. And so it's cool that those relationships have evolved. And it's interesting reflecting on it. When I first got into business, I saw all the agents around me as competition. And one day it clicked where they're not competition. They're actually the people you're working with to close these transactions.
That's like the mindset of abundance versus scarcity that, it gets talked about a lot, but that's putting it into action. And that's where I live. Like there's enough for everybody, and it's not competition. We help each other.
It's not. And if you can stand on the shoulders of giants, you're only going to get better yourself. And if you can then share what other giants are doing, they grow taller, and that makes you grow taller. Like, it's a benefit for everybody. And so, it's like, why not just put your guards down, share, and see what good things come of it.
And I think what a lot of people find is there are some best practices, and there are things that can elevate, but there's no secrets, right? It's just that some people operate and do things better. Mm-hmm. It's like everybody knows that social media is out there. Some people just excel at it. Everybody knows that, maybe having some implemented systems would be helpful, but some people have really great systems and are better at implementing. Some people insist on the right people, which I think all of these are important, by the way. But like, maybe the systems aren't as important, but surrounding yourself and your team with the right people is important. So I just think like the more people you talk to, the more you find your lane and the more you can perfect that lane. So that's where it's been helpful to me.
Yeah, I mean, you're a pro athlete, and it's like how do you excel at what you do? It's like it's not all about just having a good eating schedule. It's not all about just having a good sleep schedule. It's not all about just practicing. It's a combination of, and our businesses are always evolving, and some areas just need more focus than others. And I find talking to the group, it sometimes reminds me of, oh yeah, I did that to get to this point, and I for some reason got away from doing that. I need to get back to doing more of that thing.
Right.
And so sometimes just hearing how somebody's doing something it puts a fire under your butt to have you go back and focus on that thing of like, yeah, you're right. Maybe I did make a bad hire over here, and I really need to reevaluate. Maybe it's not a bad hire. Maybe they're an amazing person just doing the wrong things during the day, and that's going to
Funny you
change.
say that. I have a mastermind group within my own office. Okay. And one person was talking about somebody on their team and how they were an energy suck, and like they just weren't. It wasn't a good hire, and they're like, but like it's only been a couple months, and we're like, so they're creating more work from you. You're paying them money, and you're complaining to us about it. Like, why haven't you let them go? And she's like, yeah, you're right. And like the group was kind of like, hey, don't come in next meeting talking about this again. Like
Yeah.
you got to do something about it. And she did, and it was like, oh yeah, that was great, good advice. So like, man, there's valuable advice out there to be had, and sometimes it's just sometimes it's even confirming what you already know and just giving you the nudge you need.
Yeah. I mean, I it's incredibly powerful to have friends and peers, family who will hold the mirror up to you and be like,
Right.
hey,
Yeah.
you're being silly right now. Like, you've been complaining about this thing for 3 months. What are you going to do?
Right. Yeah. But, well, I was just going to say, like, I am grateful. If I didn't say it already, I'm really grateful for not just the podcast, but like the group you've had on. It's fun to, before I talk to people, I'll listen to their episode with you. So I've got like a little bit more context and, a little bit more to talk about. And I can like pull on some strings where I know that they're the expert. You know what I mean? So that's been kind of nice.
That's what's actually really cool about the podcast and then going into this group is I've found that, as to your point, we all do business. We're all successful, and we're all doing it slightly different. But within that, we have a superpower, and you can glean something from their superpower. Some people just, like Wendy, for example, just crushes it on social media. Crushes it. She's posting all the time, and I'm always, like, I follow her, and I'm always impressed by what she's doing. And if I ask her, she literally opens the book, and she's like, here's what I'm doing. Here's how I approached it. And I love that about our core group, because you can get some really amazing little nuggets. And then what I do is I run those back to the team and like, all right, how do we put this into play where we're not doing it today and tomorrow, but we built it in as a system, and we can continue to do this over time.
Yeah.
And I feel that's the secret sauce, the consistency. I don't care what industry or like athletic endeavor or whatever it may be, it's consistency is always the key. Always, always, always.
I would agree with that. I would agree.
So let's roll into, we're kind of in the season of, we're rolling into the slower season. It's, I'm not trying to manifest it. It's just a historical reality.
You don't make the market. You just take what's given, and you work around.
Exactly. And I think, within that, it presents a really great opportunity. There's an opportunity when you're working in the business, and then there's an opportunity to work on the business.
Right.
And as we tend to go into the historical seasonal trend, What are some of the things you're doing to work on your business?
Great question, because yeah, it is a little bit slower right now, and I'm still busy, but with kind of some one-off type of things. So I'll do some business planning, and I mean, ultimately, what I'm doing is having a lot more conversations, and those conversations are building the pipeline for next year.
Say more about that. Who are the conversations with?
Yeah, they're honestly, it's the same. It's my sphere, right? Like it is people who have rented in the past, who have bought in the past, who they're going through life changes. They're having babies, or maybe they're going to get married, and like big life changes typically they also facilitate a move a lot of times. And so I'm talking to a lot of people about that. And then in talking to people about what I'm doing, because naturally you ask someone what's going on, how's life, what's new, and they're asking you the same stuff. It's generating, I might have mentioned this to you, but like I'm rehabbing a multi-unit building. And so like I'm telling them that, and then I'm learning, oh, I've done that, or, oh, I want to do that, or, like it generates curiosity. And so there's more conversations to be had, which is kind of why I'm like, oh, it tees a lot up for next year. The primary bit is definitely just like condo single families that people are looking to get more space next year.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, and I think it's always smart going after the group who have that need. There's a pressure of they have to either upsize or downsize versus the person who just wants to buy. They're
Yeah.
they're more aloof and they get a little bit more squirrely. Whereas somebody who has 3 kids but they're living in a 2 bedroom, there's a different pressure they have.
Well, and I don't know. I mean, there's always the bit that you're a guide or a shaman or whatever you want to say, in helping somebody with their process. But
Yeah.
I feel as of late that it's even more so that way with it being an election year, with rates having like some anticipated movement. You're getting a little bit more paralysis by analysis, and so having more conversations right now is a huge benefit for a month, 2 months from now, because you're building that equity of being the expert and helping to navigate the landscape of housing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, one thing that just happened, which is kind of wild, is an ordinance just passed. This is very specific to Chicago, so not gonna apply nationwide, but it just paints the picture of like you have to educate people in your market and in your specialty. They just passed an ordinance in Chicago where essentially for multifamily buildings, you now have to give I want to say it's 60-day notification to the city and tenants when you are going to list a building for sale. If you go under contract, you have to notify the tenants within 30 days, and then they have 90-day time window to match that offer.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Wait, so they can then bump that person who's under contract out?
Correct. And there's not even a thing in there that says that they have to provide financing. So like it's kind of, it feels like the Wild West right now, that this ordinance just got passed, and it's only in a certain geographic region, but it's a big one, and a popular one. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. And ultimately, all we're trying to do is get out in front as much as we can and figure out how to address it, because nobody wants to have a hang up of like 6 months if they're trying to sell their building, which is ultimately what it could be.
True.
So it's just a wild time, and like as you get more information and as the landscape changes, you've got to be out in front. So that's where that's one of the pieces where I go, okay, it really feels like guiding and gathering information and I guess unpacking it is really the best way I could say, or how to address it. That's what we're trying to do, as pros.
I agree, and I think that's where people who get into the business and they just want to be part time. You're not going to know these things, and there's no way you can guide somebody correctly, and you're potentially create a lot of downstream issues. In San Francisco, it just got implemented. They voted it in a couple of years ago, which I think is terrible. But there's now a vacancy tax, and so
Wow.
if you
I've
then
not
buy
heard of
your
this.
you buy your 4 unit building and you're in the middle of a rehab, you now have to budget for a vacancy tax because no one's living in it during your rehab. And
Wow.
and it's like, wow, okay, so I'm actually making a product better for people to have a better life in this building, safer, because you're
Yeah.
redoing the structure or the foundation or whatever it may be. But then you're getting dinged on the back end for doing it, and it's like, holy cow,
Yeah.
who's not thinking through on these things? Like, I
I
get
know.
it, I understand, but holy hell, it's nutty. But if you don't know that and you're guiding an investor who's coming
Yeah.
in from a different market, who's run their numbers, and margins can be tight, especially with higher interest rates and things like that.
Yep.
They can really chew up their profits very quick, especially if a project takes longer or it takes a little bit longer to sell, get under contract. It's another layer.
I can't believe that. I don't know the reasoning behind it. The ordinance I said in Chicago, there's good intentions behind it, which is they're trying to give opportunities to tenants, so I understand it. I just, the implementation might be, need to be tweaked, but we'll see, right? Like, you never know how it'll actually go.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the intention is right. The execution is what's a little
Yeah.
off. And then,
It's like politics 101, right?
yeah, yeah, it's like, yeah, I think that's always the nature of the beast. So then they create another law, and then we get overlapped with all these, like, all the crazy laws. But I think within that, it's what gives us the value is then knowing it. And if you yourself have done a project
Yeah.
and taken it from A to Z, these are the stick points you're going to run into. These are the challenges you're going to have. And you either need to budget time to take care of it, or you're going to need to budget money to pay through the next piece.
Well, and so just to revisit and add on to the answer, like I'm talking to a lot of people, right? That's number one. You can't like stop having action. And then the planning part for next year, because it's a little bit slower right now, and like business development is I think something that probably everybody at least should do, probably does, which is retroactively looking back and just going, all right, what were my expenses? Where did I succeed? Where can I grow? What are some resources I can tap into? This inner circle is a huge one. I'm going to the Compass retreat. It's a nationwide retreat. It's like, where can I, like have iron sharpens iron? And that's what I'm looking for at this point, where I've got a little bit more time on my side, so I can self-scout, if you will.
Yeah. Lance Pendleton was on the episode. It was a really great episode. It's actually, his is the number one most consumed, meaning people listened for the longest duration.
What do I got to do? What do
I don't know. But his was it was crazy. It was like 99% consumed, meaning people listened from literally beginning to end without clicking off. But one of the things that I gleaned from him is he's like, business plans suck. And it's not the business plan sucks, but we write them, we don't look at them, and then next year we just rewrite them.
Yeah.
But we never go back like in the first quarter and go, okay, is what we have on the plan, is it working? Do we continue to do this?
Right.
Do we change it, or do we remove it and replace it? And
yeah.
And I think doing the reflection I think it's incredibly important. I think it should actually be scheduled. And I don't think it should be in these 12-month cycles. I think that's horrible. Mm-hmm. It's like New Year's resolutions. They're not set it and forget it and hope it happens, but it's like, how do you actually create and implement a plan?
So I agree with you. I think that like we are taught, when you have a goal, it's supposed to be a SMART goal, right? And it's supposed to be specific is number one, right?
Yeah.
And I have found that it does not work for me, or I'm just really bad. But I've hit a lot of goals, so I can't say I'm bad at hitting goals because they're not specific enough. But what I've, I guess, pivoted to piggyback off of what Lance is talking, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I look more in trends. Like, okay, I need to do more of this. I need to put more energy and focus on X, Y, Z versus like quantifying an exact amount.
Sure.
And so that's been helpful for me, is what I could say, is like I need to change like trending directions, as opposed to be like, oh, I have to be held to this very specific standard of this many calls or this many texts or whatever it might be, you know, where I'm like, I have to hit this many listings or sales or whatever it is. Sometimes it is out of your control, and sometimes life happens and you need a little bit of grace for yourself. And that's where I go, if you're trending in the right direction, good things are going to happen. You know, if you're doing the things right, sometimes you're going to do more than you thought you would, which is also fun. But that's where when I say I'm business planning, that's kind of what I'm doing. Yeah.
Which totally makes sense. And I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to what works for you. We all have obviously different personalities, different approaches, different things that we've gotten successful from. And so
and the expenses are going to slap you in the face because you do your taxes. You know what I mean?
God,
you can't not know.
They just paid those.
I think every realtor I talk to files an extension, me included. But it's like, yep, well, got those off. Goes off, you know, check that off. Got that done.
This is off topic, but on the same vein is, I actually have multiple accounts for the business.
Okay.
And so all the money comes into a deposit account, which typically has 0. And then from there, I'm actually looking at my sheet. A portion goes into taxes, and it's an account reserved just for taxes. I don't touch it. And
Very
it just
cool.
sits there. And then after I pay everything off, whatever, if there's any left, then it moves back into the operating expense. The operating expense is where everything draws from. That's where all the credit cards get paid from. That's where all the payrolls get paid from. Marketing, everything gets paid out of there.
Yep.
And then a portion goes into profits, and that's at different cycles. If there are profits, then it gets reallocated back into the team.
That's awesome.
And performance. And then, it just, in doing that, it keeps it really simple for me, because I have an easier dash, and finance is not my strong suit. And so it gives me a more buffer when I'm looking at it. And
so that, I'm going to keep riffing on this because it's important. This inner circle, and like I have served as a reference for other people that didn't even know, like, oh, I should set up an LLC, or I should set up an S corp, or whatever. I should set up payroll. Like, all of these are steps that at some point in your career you will want. And I've had conversations with people that are like much larger producers, and they're like, oh, I should do that. So it's not always about how to buy and sell real estate or how to help or navigate. Sometimes it's about, hey, what are best practices to run a business?
Yeah.
That's huge. It's
huge. And not for nothing, there's 2.5 million realtors in the U.S. We're the number one audited industry.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yes, by far. And it's because we commingle money, we run things on the same accounts, we don't set up an actual business structure, and we get ourselves into trouble. We buy, I'll buy the 6,000 pound car and I'll pay $100,000, but it's a write-off. Totally not true. And we watch these TikTok gurus and get ourselves, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble really quick.
Yeah. It's really funny you say that, because I'll say things like, oh, it's a write-off. It's like, you got to make the money to write it off first, you know?
It's that episode of Schitt's Creek. He's like, it's a write-off. And he's like, what? Do you know what that means?
Yeah. Might as well be Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy, right? That's not how it works.
In having had the opportunity to sit down with 100 podcast guests, there is one undeniable truth that I have personally learned. If you don't know me, you will not do business with me, period. And so us being secret agents out there, we're not going to build and grow our businesses. The easiest, cheapest, fastest way to get our name, our brand, our identity out to the masses is virtual of social media. However, the bigger challenge is most people don't know what type of content to create and put out there. They don't know how to identify their brand. And most importantly, they're not crafting a message that is most applicable to their ideal audience. The person to help me with that is Steve Blank Jr. So he's got a phenomenal resource guide. If you head over to steveblankjr.com/realtor180, you can go ahead and grab that for yourself today. Yeah, and I actually, so my dad owned he owned multiple businesses, but when I was 5, he started a business and then he wound up selling it a few years ago. So he owned it literally the bulk of my life. And I had an amazing opportunity to sit down with him and just be like, hey, I want to talk business. Mm-hmm. Basically, I adopted him as my coach. He didn't know it. And I was like, I'm going to call you every Friday at the same time, and I'm just going to ask you questions. And one of the questions I asked was, if you were to start from scratch tomorrow, who would you hire first and why? And he said an accountant, a bookkeeper, and an attorney. Those were his first 3 hires. And I was like, oh, tell me more. Like, why them? And structuring your business that's so incredibly important. And then having a bookkeeper, because 9 times out of 10, if you're a good producer, you're really good at networking and talking to people, but you're probably going to suck horribly at finance. And so having somebody clean up behind you is going to save you a world of hurt. And then a good tax advisor who's going to say, okay, if you set up as an LLC based on what you're making, you're going to get this benefit. However, if you do an S Corp, you're going to get this benefit. And if you do a C Corp, you're going to get this. And here are the risk and rewards for each. And you kind of weigh your options. And so I think just like people buying real estate, you find a really good advisor. In business, you got to find really good advisors.
It's exactly right. I want to find people I trust where they will unpack some of the stuff for me. When I ask questions, like they'll pick up the phone, they'll respond, and ultimately though, like when my accountant files my taxes, I trust him.
Yeah.
And I know that he knows all best practices, and he is like, I mean, he's polished, so I've given him out as a referral all the time, which like literally is how I hope that I'm, appealing to my own clients, where it's like, yep, this is the guy, you can just trust him, he knows, and I'm going to tell all my friends. Like
100%.
That's how, it's how any small business works, right? Like any service oriented. So I think that, in that way, with our allied resources, we can pay it forward a bit, right?
Yeah, and with those allies, they're symbiotic to our business. If we're feeding them referrals, in turn, at some point, they feed us referrals.
What's like the best compliment ever is having, and man, I've been fortunate. Like this really is one of the top compliments I could have received in the industry is like, I've had photographer that knows a million realtors, work with me. I've had lender who knows a million realtors work with me. I've had other like brokers that are like, Steve, this is my family member. Please take it. And it's like, wow, what a compliment. What, like, very grateful for that opportunity. But like, that is above all else the best compliment that I could have.
I 100% agree. When I would say that the highest referral I've ever received was a colleague in a different market who their sister wanted to buy a place in the city, and they called me, and I was like, oh my God, because I feel like agents can sniff out really quick who's who they would work with and who they wouldn't. And a sibling, like I know hell or high water, I'm going to make sure my siblings are taken care of, period. Like it's not even a debate. And
No
so
doubt.
for me, like that's it's such an honor at that level to be able to serve, which I think is I think it's cool. And think it speaks volume about all these relationships that we have the opportunity to build and nourish through the years, really.
Right. Yeah.
Within your business, I know you're doing an investment project right now. Do you typically work with investors, or is your bread and butter the single families? Where's your
Good question.
strength?
So, I grew up kind of in a finance household. My dad had his own financial planning company, really successful out of Cincinnati. And so I grew up kind of around the numbers, I guess, is what I would say. And when I got into real estate, I was like, yeah, I want to work with investment property. This is what makes sense to me. I like studied finance in college, right? And so I married the two worlds, which I love. And so a lot of business that I do is 2, 3, 4 units, 6 units, 12 units, you name it. I'm doing, 100 some units right now, portfolio that I'm selling. So I like multifamily because I like running pro formas. I like seeing where the rubber meets the road as far as what's a good return. What anticipated expenses are we going to have? And then, like you see a physical property, you see transformation and rehab. That's all like, man, it's gratifying and, to be able to see the fruits of your labor, right? Versus just a portfolio. There's room for a portfolio in investments as well, but it's just they're different, right? So it's nice to have that diversification. So to answer your question, yeah, I work with a good bit of investors. I'd say the majority of people I work with are still homeowners, single family, condo, townhome, that kind of stuff. But I work with people that want a house hack, right? And they want to live in one unit and rent out the others. Or they're just like, hey, I just need an investment property and I want to do that. And so I work with a good bit of those and, figuring out what returns they want and what they've got to deploy and what neighborhoods make a good fit based on all the criteria they have. So it's really fun. Like, it's really fun. There's a lot of moving parts to it. When you walk through a building and I can point out like, notice that your heating here, it's all on one boiler system. You're going to pay that heating bill versus, everybody's got independent furnaces here, right? Big difference. Your bottom line difference. So that's just like one small example, but it's really fun to get to help people with educating them and figuring out what's a good fit.
I like that. And you and I have talked numerous times, and one thing that I really appreciate that you said is educating people to buy well. I think that's so incredibly important, especially from an investor's perspective.
Right.
Is you got to know your margins. You have to know your room for flow. Like things are going to shift, things are going to change, and you have to buy right out of the gate. Like you can't just get super excited about a property and get a scotoma and not look at the numbers and
do not chase the market. Do not chase. Like you've got to have the foundation of buying right in any market and you'll be okay. Yeah. Just making sure that the value is consistent with things is everyone wants to get the deal of a lifetime, the unicorn, but in reality, you're looking for solid, dependable, and then whatever your risk tolerance is as far as neighborhood and level of rehab and all that kind of stuff. So
it's funny, speaking of the unicorns, I feel doing this day in and day out, looking at properties, evaluating, I feel like honestly, I probably really come across one unicorn a year.
Yeah. Do you
like
buy
one sometimes no is my short answer, because sometimes it's San Francisco, and so it could be a $4 million property, it could be a $5 million, and it's I just don't have the capital to not only purchase but to carry it through to the next level. But there's a couple in my mind I'm like, I wish I was able to pull that one together, because I saw it Like like you see it on a different level of like everything that it can be, and then you see somebody purchase it, get the score of the lifetime, and then boom, it's like
You know why that happens
amazing.
sometimes? In my opinion, you know why that happens? I think that, and not always, but I think that, yeah, I mean, it's obviously valued at the wrong number.
Hmm.
You know, like whether it's a for sale by owner
Hmm.
or a realtor that maybe doesn't know, and it's all the more important, reason is to work with somebody that knows the neighborhood, knows the property type, knows, you know what I mean? It's a little bit of a pitch for people that are plugged in, right?
Hmm.
Realtors like that are doing the right stuff, knowing property values is, man, if there was one skill that you need to have, that's probably it.
And that's what. So San Francisco has over 100 neighborhoods in a 7 by 7 mile footprint, which is crazy. And to give you context to that, and I've said this before on the podcast, but the footprint of San Francisco is smaller than Disney's parking lot.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
It's crazy. And so what happens a lot of times is somebody they'll have a friend or a neighbor or a colleague or whomever it is. They have a license in California, the agent. And
Mhm.
so they're like, oh, I'll put it on the market for you. And they put it on, but they don't understand that the house on one side of the street is worth less or more than the other. And this property is worth more because it has a view.
Yeah.
Or the price per value goes up in condos, each floor you go up.
Yes.
And so it is the backyard south facing. It's like there's all these hyper nuances to it. Within that, what the interest rates are doing, where are the buyers circling? They move around the city at different times. Different neighborhoods become more popular than others. And so usually these unicorns were it's a combination of, and it's a combination of right place, wrong time. Like they put it on that maybe they put it on right before um, a holiday,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
everybody skips town, or they put it on and a storm hits and no one's going out for a few days because it's
Right.
raining, cats and dogs, and it's like just weird stuff happens. But I think the other layer that I've learned is you don't find good deals, you make good deals. You have to know how to negotiate those deals, and more so you have to know the agent on the other side. Like,
Yeah.
are they out of town, are they out of touch with this property? Can you show them the comps or educate them to guide their
Sure.
clients to it? Like, what's the pressure of the seller? Why is the seller selling? And what's their timeline? And once you start understanding this, then those are the levers you can start pulling.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. Like all of the stuff you just said is how I approach and when I talk to my clients, I tell them this is how we're going to approach. We're going to look at it from a micro and a macro,
Yep.
market scale and and talk to the other, understand
Hmm.
as opposed to just imposing like, well, this is what I want. Like let's understand and see how we can leverage.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
It's sales 101 is seek first to understand. Like if you don't, you're just shooting from the hip, and who knows what you're gonna hit.
Yeah.
And I always find it funny, especially with the investors or developers, and they're like, oh, I want to go in, X amount low, and I'm like, hold on, let me evaluate all of this first before we come up with a number,
Well, let me
because
tell you
there.
this. I mean, what you're saying. Sorry, I cut you off. Finish your thought. I've got. Man,
No, go
you're.
ahead, jump in. You're excited. I love it.
Oh yeah. So, well, I was just gonna say, you're like, okay, in the seek to be understood. As I interrupted you, very ironic. Um, dang it,
Classic.
dang it. Now, what I was gonna say is like, so doing this investment property and rehabbing it, man, do I understand a lot more. Like I'm walking the walk. I
Yeah.
had a really really good understanding previously, but it has even more depth now, right?
Mm.
As to with the investment property, I've got other investment property, but this one, doing a full rehab project, is more intensive and gives me a greater understanding of timeline, cost, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
there was a good base there already, but now it's like I said, has more depth and
Mm.
and understanding. So that's ultimately going to be, I think, prove to be pretty helpful.
So with your personal investment, what's your exit? How are you making profit? Are you renting it out? Are you flipping
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it'd be a long hold.
Nice.
You know, I'm no reason to sell. You know, I look at it as just another investment that that is like leveraging my professional knowledge, where I know the market, I know rents, I deal with tenants all the time and finding good tenants, and so yeah, a lot of different pieces of the puzzle, but I feel very comfortable in that. Um, Sometimes more than I feel comfortable in a certain stock or
Yeah.
something along those lines, right? Like it's a risk tolerance, but I really like where it's at, and yeah, I mean, we'll see how it all turns out, but I'm quite optimistic.
I mean, knowing you, I would confidently guess that you bought well. Like I just knowing you and the way that you approach your business and your clients, I would imagine that you have contingency plans baked into this and you'll exit just fine.
It's true, and honestly, all the pieces that we talked about, there was a multiple offer on this building, and the truth of the matter is like I think I presented a very clear offer that was very strong and communicated well with the other agent. And like all of the pieces needed to be there to have a good relationship and make sure that 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 agent then communicated that this offer was strong to his client, um, because it was tight, like it's competitive.
Yeah.
So when all those pieces align, that's when you can, like you put it, make a deal.
I, I just recently had a conversation with Mike Konopek. I had a conversation with Mark Hernandez, and
Oh yeah.
and they do it. I know you do it, and I know a lot of top performers do this. But there's an art to selling the offer to the agent. There's a. It's not just dollars and cents, but it's you have to give them the confidence in that offer and get them to understand how you approach it, why you approach it that way. And more often than not, it's not always about the dollars and cents. It's not the highest offer that wins. It's structuring that whole sales pitch behind it.
Sean, I was competing against cash offers and I was financed, which, as you well know, is
That's
not,
amazing.
like is usually tough competition.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you do have to, you have to, you have to instill confidence. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And just reflecting on what's happening within our market and the decoupling of commissions and new agents coming in,
Yeah,
these nuances of the transactions, and this is not a sales pitch to join a team or to do an apprenticeship, if you will. But I feel the big disadvantage, those people coming into the business or are new, they're not going to understand these nuances, or they're going to learn them the really, really hard way. And it's going to take a lot of time. And so just being able to sit in on those conversations from an expert who's just
totally,
understands how to do it is going to give that group such an incredible advantage. And that's,
totally.
I think, not to go way on tangent, but I that's where I feel those part timers, the ones who do like one transaction a year, who kind of dabble in selling real estate, they're either going to really do their clients a disservice, or they're going to get squeezed out because the water level has to rise. Like the quality of agents out there has to increase. And I think this whole transition sucks and it's hard, but I think really good things on the other side are actually going to come from it.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Framing, right? Is this a hurdle or an opportunity? Right?
Yeah.
It provokes a new conversation that then shows, oh yeah, you should get value out of who you work with. And ultimately that's an easy conversation for somebody that's confident in their ability, right?
Yeah.
And every agent has to have the conversation whether you're comfortable with it or not. So use it as an opportunity to go, hey, here's how the industry has shifted a little bit. and here's what that means for you, and here's how we're going to approach it together. And then they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's really well thought out. That's, you know what I mean? So I look at it as an opportunity, not necessarily a hurdle.
It's interesting. You immediately reminded me. I have two good friends, Mark and Serena. When I was running the martial arts school, their kids were students, which is crazy to think about because their kids were like, one of them wasn't even born, and now they're in or graduated college. So that gives you context of how old I am. But they had a piece of art in their house, and it was a Chinese character, and underneath it was the definition, and it says chaos, but it also means opportunity. And I always try to remember it when we're in these situations of the industry shifting, the mortgage rates are changing, the compensation's changing, all these things, and that's chaos. But then I try to always like check myself and be like, there's an opportunity here. You just have to look for it. It's there. You just have to find it.
Yeah. I love it. So much of what you're saying resonates, and like, I just talked to my friend last night who, he's a coach, assistant volleyball coach at Purdue. And the long story short is, I said a couple words. They're up here playing Northwestern, and yeah, sorry, this is a tangent right now, but you can cut it out. But he's like, we say a couple words to the team, and I know the coach, old family friends, and yeah, I mean, just talking about the opportunity is really like there are so many moving pieces, and there are challenges, but like if you can shape it as an opportunity, you're going to have excitement around it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I almost liken it to, like, I mean, when you're in athletics, you may have stress or nervousness going into a match, but like that's all just extra energy. And you can either frame that extra energy into something that makes you like shaky nervous, or you can be like, use it to direct it as focus.
Yeah.
It's all just extra energy, right? And so like framing the opportunity is just imperative to success, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, there's a really phenomenal book. It's probably one of the most powerful books I've ever read. I picked it up when I was 18. I still have the copy, and it's like tattered and worn and dog-eared and underlined. It's The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, and it's written from a samurai and like a couple thousand years ago. It's insane. But he basically says in one of the lines in the book is the only difference between two men is what they think. And I always, similar to what you're sharing, is when I would go into competition, I would be like, I'm nervous, they're nervous. What I do with this nervous is going to be different than what they do, and that's going to give me the opportunity.
Yeah.
But we're in the same boat. Like, they're over there and I'm over here.
Yeah. Yeah. One line I would use is like, you're either, the moment's either going to be bigger than you or you're going to be bigger than the moment. And who are the clutch players, The clutch players are always bigger than the moment. And it's like, sure. Oh man, all you got to do is shape it and believe it. Yeah. And I mean, you will manifest it.
And this goes back to the very, very beginning of this conversation, is we talked about the inner circle group and having this sphere and people who can hold up the mirror. And then you look at these athletes, pro athletes. Mm-hmm. I don't care what sport we're talking about, they all have coaches. They all have somebody, no matter the Jordans of the world who are just crushing it game after game after game, they still have somebody coaching them and guiding them and holding the mirror and pushing them to their next level of being best.
Yeah.
And I think that's shouldn't be lost in business or in this industry of it's good to have that around you. It's good to reevaluate. It's good to continue.
And like
to
we talked about earlier, there are different methods of success. There are different ways that people succeed in this business.
Yeah.
And you've got to talk to more people to figure out what works for you, because there are many ways of doing it.
Exactly, and it's not all monetary. It's
Correct.
and I think that's where people get skewed. It's like, oh, it's just about buying bigger stuff and faster cars. It's not. It's
Time.
sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's just building an infrastructure around you so you can go have family dinner every night. Period. And that's your definition of success, and that's amazing.
Spot on.
And I, you know, that's the self-reflection and really figuring out how you're getting to shape this clay that's exclusively yours.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. You know, you get to make all the choices. It's the responsibility. It's also the gold. It's also the gold, you know, you choose.
Yeah. I mean, that's like it's the benefit of all of this hard work and the hard decisions and those challenging problems and keeping yourself on that right mindset. There's a deep joy that I get from solving these problems.
Yeah, man. I don't know how long we've gone, but I feel like we've got to be over.
Yeah, no, we're like, I literally just looked at the clock and we are at it. Unfortunately, yeah, that's going to be a wrap up. Man, dude, I just feel jazzed and pumped to go back to work after this conversation. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, I'm like, lean into the hard stuff, right? No, I mean, I'm with you. Like, let's do everything we can, right? Like, let's continue to evolve. The market changes, we got to change, you know. So,
plain and simple.
Yeah, I'm excired for it. But
Cool.
Thanks for having me on, Shawn. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I look forward to seeing you more at the Inner
I
Circle
want
group.
the third time. The third one. Maybe we'll do a group one or something, you know? It'd be good.
We should. You know what we should do? We should pull Sam in because, like him and I all formed this. It was the brainchild of that conversation. So I think that would be an amazing next step for us. And then you'll officially be the third appearing guest on the show.
Wow. Can't wait. I'm going to hang a certificate. No. No. Thanks again. Yeah, we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds good.